Welcome to this Rattle and Hum Sports Podcast. I'm Bryan Houston. We're talking Cowboys today with the contributing writer to the Rattle and Hum Sports covering the Dallas Cowboys, Matthew Postins. How you doing, Matthew?
Hey, fine, Bryan. How are you?
Doing well. Hope you enjoy this nice, cold April weather we're dealing with now.
Oh, it's fantastic. It's like being in Minnesota in June.
You gotta love the weather in East Texas and in North Texas. All right, so a couple of things that are going on right now. The Cowboys apparently are having their big Texas-based combine as we speak. Are there any players that are in-state players that are at this combine that the Cowboys may seriously be interested in as possible free agents or draft picks?
Well, we don't know everybody they invited to today's pro day, but one guy that certainly would interest people in East Texas is Matthew Tucker, the former running back from Chapel Hill who had a nice career with the TCU Horned Frogs. Most people are valuing him as either a seventh-round pick or a priority free agent after the draft. He had a nice career at TCU. He's a pretty solid runner, pretty tough, pretty durable. He could be a nice change of pace back for the Cowboys. You could throw him in the mix with a guy like Philip Tanner or Lance Dunbar and see what happens. Tucker's a bit more like DeMarco Murray in that he's a little bit bigger, he's a little bit thicker, does more tough running than guys like Lance Dunbar and Philip Tanner. Certainly of interest to folks out in East Texas. As far as other players are concerned, Blaze Foltz, one of their offensive linemen at TCU. He could be out there today. He'd be somebody that would interest the Cowboys late. Obviously, I think they're interested in every offensive lineman they can get their hands on. And then SMU-wise, obviously Margus Hunt would interest them, although I'm not sure he's at the Combine today. He's been valued as a first or a second-round pick, and what's going on today is really more for guys that are going to be taken late in the draft. So Hunt may not be out there today, but he's the most prevalent guy from an SMU standpoint. Now, there are also players from North Texas that aren't going to TCU or SMU. For instance, Kyle Padron, the former South Lake Carroll quarterback, is at the Combine, or is expected to be at the Combine today. He went to SMU and then transferred to Eastern Washington last year, where he had a very nice senior year. That's the same place Bo Levi Mitchell transferred to after he left SMU. So a lot of different folks out there today that the Cowboys will be taking a look at. Most of these guys are going to be third-day guys or priority free agents, but those are a few of the guys that they'll probably have their eye on.
Yeah, I think Hunt is supposed to be there today. You mentioned him. You also mentioned Padron. I think he's also supposed to be there. Realistically, is there any chance that they could even find one diamond in the rough out of a situation, out of an event like this?
Oh, certainly. This is where they found Lance Dunbar last year. He became the all-time leading rusher at UNT last year. They put him through the Combine paces at an event just like this, and Dunbar impressed them enough to sign him to an undrafted free agent contract after the draft. And he ended up putting himself in a position where 3 or 4 games into the season, he was called up off the practice squad to help them out in the Baltimore game. He had a few nice carries in that game. And he's going to be given a chance to prove that he could be the number 2 running back in this offense this year. So certainly you can find guys in events like this that could come in, give them an opportunity and see what they do with it, and they can end up making the roster and doing something for you.
No stone unturned trying to find new players for the Cowboys.
Absolutely.
Okay. Another piece of news that's come down, the Cowboys asking Doug Free to take a pay cut. What can you tell us about that?
Well, we don't know exactly how much they're asking him to take a pay cut, but obviously his cap hit is $10 million this year. And it's very interesting to see what the Cowboys will do should Free come back and say, you know what, I'm not taking a pay cut. I mean, he has his contract. He has his upfront guaranteed money already. And, of course, they're courting Eric Winston, potentially, to either compete with Doug Free or to replace Doug Free. And if they decide to release Doug Free, there are 2 things they can do. They can release him right now, take the $10 million cap hit, and then it's off their books next year because all he has right now is $10 million in dead money. That's the money that will accelerate into the cap hit this year should they release him before June 1st. If they release him as a post-June 1st designation, which is what they did with Marcus Spears, they could spread his cap hit of $10 million over the next 2 years in 2014 and 2015, thereby deferring the pain, so to speak. I think it would be interesting to go ahead and let Free go, if they're going to let him go. Let him go before June 1st. Go ahead and take the cap hit this year because you'll save $10 million next year that way. With the Cowboys, already having $142 million committed in cap space, that $10 million should come in real handy next year. But it's unclear how much they're asking Free to take a pay cut, but it's likely, several million this year to help give them cap space for this year and beyond.
And whatever decision might be in Free's hands, he's dealing from a position of great weakness right now. He doesn't have much leverage.
Based on his performance last year, yes, he doesn't have a whole lot of leverage. Like I said, he's gotten most of the guaranteed money that he was promised when he signed the contract a few years ago. Basically, what the Cowboys are saying is right now you haven't played up to the expectation of the contract. We need you to take a pay cut so we can bring people in to help us overall on the football team and possibly compete with you at the position. And what it boils down to is, does Doug Free really want to be here in 2013 and have to compete for a position with potentially Eric Winston or potentially even a draft pick taken later this month, or would he like to just go ahead, cut bait, move on, and try and find a place with a new team where he could potentially be a starter?
All right, and talk about Eric Winston. Give us a scouting report on him. What do you know about him, and how much of an upgrade might he be for the Cowboys line?
Well, from one standpoint, Winston's a lot like Free. He went to Kansas City last year, signed a 4-year, $22 million contract, and the Chiefs released him after 1 year. They weren't all that happy with his performance. He was a third-round pick for the Houston Texans in 2006. He played his way into a contract extension after 3 years, was a very consistent part of that offensive line, but like most of Kansas City's players last year, he did not have a very good year. I tend to think that he's the type of player that can bounce back from that in 2013 if he falls into the right situation. If he comes to Dallas, obviously he's not going to command top dollar, because at this point in the process in free agency, nobody's going to get top dollar, but certainly he's a guy you could bring in immediately and have him either compete with Doug Free or take over the starting right tackle position, and at least, I think, elevate the level of play they had at that position last year, and certainly provide Tony Romo more protection.
In the meantime, we continue to be just a few weeks away from the NFL draft, and obviously it's huge this year. The Cowboys really need to hit on the majority of the picks. Anybody stock moving up or down in a situation that might impact the Cowboys and their decision?
Well, I've actually been looking at a lot of mock drafts this week, getting ready to publish my next Mock Talk article, and there has been a lot of moving up and down. I've seen mock drafts that have actually had Matt Barkley taken at number 2 for Jacksonville. I think that's a little out there, frankly, but Don Banks just published his new mock draft at SportsIllustrated.com, and he put together a very interesting scenario that might actually happen on draft day. He has the Cowboys trading down with San Francisco down to number 31. Of course, San Francisco has a ton of picks in this draft, so they have the ammunition to move up if they want to. He believes that the 49ers are interested in a player named Tank Carradine, the defensive end of Florida State, and that they're willing to trade up to number 18 to get him. Cowboys would fall back to 31 and take Malenik Watson, the offensive tackle from Florida State. Cowboys are attached to several other players in mock drafts that I've seen, and that article will be out this weekend at Rattle and Sports. But this is the first mock draft I've seen where somebody has the Cowboys trading down to take a player. Now, financially, it makes sense. That would mean that the Cowboys would spend $1.2 million less in bonus money and about $2 million less overall on the contract for that player. But certainly, you're taking a risk because some of the players they've been attached to in mock drafts at number 18 are clearly more talented than what they might get at number 31.
And I was going to say, their history of trading down is almost disastrous. So I know that would drive Cowboy fans right up a wall if Jerry trades down in this particular draft, given the number of holes they have and the need for really good talent that they have.
Well, just to play devil's advocate,
okay.
The one thing that I think might be of value in terms of trading down is the 3 positions that the Cowboys need, which is offensive line, defensive line, and safety, are the 3 deepest positions in this draft. If you look at most of the mock drafts that are out there, they are littered with offensive linemen, defensive linemen, and even safeties. I mean, it's a very deep, very talented class at those 3 positions. So if you're going to pick a year to trade down, get an extra second or a third-round pick so you can address those 3 areas of key need. This is a good year to do it because there's a lot of depth.
If you are running the Cowboys draft room right now, are you drafting to fill a need, or are you in the position of wanting to take the best player available?
Well, every team ranks their players according to their own criteria, so not everybody's big board is different. The Cowboys have always said that their philosophy is best player available. I personally like the best available player theory. However, when you have a team that you believe is pretty close to being a contender, and Jerry Jones believes that with the Cowboys, I think you have to try and marry the need with the value. To me, if the first-round pick for the Cowboys is within the top 5 of their best players available, then I'm okay with not necessarily taking the number 1 player on the board. If you can address a need like offensive guard or defensive tackle with a player that you firmly believe can be a starter immediately in this league. So let's just say, for instance, it comes down to Sheldon Richardson or Chance Warmack for that number 18 pick, and they've got Richardson ranked 1 rung higher than Chance Warmack. I don't have any problem with them taking Chance Warmack, and I would probably take Chance Warmack in that instance because I firmly believe that the Cowboys will get more bang for their buck taking a first-round offensive lineman in this draft and a first-round defensive lineman because they have got to get the running game going. That is without question. They've got to get the running game going. They've got to protect Tony Romo better. They've got to get better up front, and that's the way I would look at it. As long as the players within the top 4 or 5 of the best players available, if I want to address a need, I'm going to go ahead and address the need.
I'm with you on the offensive line. I think that if all things break even, I think they got to go O-line because that to me is like the greatest, most critical problem the Cowboys are facing right now, in my opinion.
And everything they've tried in free agency the last few years has just failed. From signing Mark Colombo, who never really quite lived up to what they were hoping for, to last year's signings of Mackenzie Bernardo and Nate Livings. Neither one of them really lived up to what they were hoping for. It's time for the Cowboys to sell out to the offensive line, get a first-round pick, get a guy who can come in and start immediately and can play at a high level. A guy like Chance Warmack, if he falls to number 18, I think he's the perfect pick for this offensive line because he comes from a program where they've won national championships. They play at a high level every single week, so the NFL play isn't going to really faze him at all. And I think he could come in and step in immediately at either guard position and start for them.
Okay, very good. In your Sunday column, Postins Pro Scripts, you mentioned that the Clemson wide receiver, DeAndre Hopkins, was in town. What can you tell us about that?
Well, that was last week when they had their 20 or so national prospects in town for 2 days to kind of put them through their paces in Valley Ranch and talk about playbook, learn more about the player, et cetera, et cetera. I thought he was a very interesting player to bring in because to me the Cowboys are fairly set at wide receiver. I mean, they could probably spend a late round pick on a guy like Kobe Hamilton from Arkansas, but I don't see them taking a first round pick on a guy like DeAndre Hopkins. I mean, sure, wouldn't you love to have DeAndre Hopkins paired with Des Bryant and Miles Austin and Dwayne Harris? But at the end of the day, that really doesn't address what you need in this draft. He's a nice want, but he's not a huge glaring need. But I thought it was interesting the Cowboys had him in. I mean, you could put together scenarios where you take Hopkins at number 18 and then turn around and trade him and get more value for him. But that just seems like a lot of moving parts to try and make something like that happen.
Okay, very good. Anything else out there that we need to know about before we let you go today?
Not at the moment. Just Mock Talk will be out this weekend along with my 5th mock draft. I've got a new selection for the Cowboys in the first round based on what's been happening out there the past couple of weeks. I've had Chance Warmack installed in there, but my belief now is that Warmack probably will not fall to the Cowboys at number 18, which is unfortunate, but I think that also means that a player that could address that same need will fall to them at number 18, so you can check that out this weekend.
Okay, so you basically do mock drafts like people filled out NCAA brackets. Some of them would fill out like 18 of them at a time.
Yeah, but I only do one every 2 weeks.
Fair enough. Hey, Matthew, thanks very much. We love reading your stuff in the Rattle and Hump Sports, and we look forward to seeing more of your work and talking to you next time, okay?
Thank you, Brian. Appreciate it.
Matthew Postins covering the Dallas Cowboys for Rattle and Hump Sports. I'm Bryan Houston. This is a Rattle and Hump Sports podcast.